Good day, students. Welcome to mathgotserved.com. In this clip, we're going to be going over problems 1 to 5 of our Volume 2 ACT Math Preparation. If you want to get access to the latest ACT prep resources, you can visit the official website at actstudents.org. Alright, let's take a look at question 1. It reads, Carmen is playing with blocks. She arranges stacks of blocks so that each successive level of blocks has one fewer block than the level below it, and the top level has one block. Such a stack with 3 levels is shown below, so we have the stack of blocks shown below here. Carmen wants to make such a stack with 12 levels. Question, how many blocks would she use to build this stack? Okay, so we have a 3-level stack of blocks here, and she desires to build a stack of blocks that has 12 levels. So how many blocks will there be there? All right, so to solve this problem, we're going to use 3 different methods, and whichever one you feel is much more acceptable to you, you can go ahead and employ that method when you are attacking problems of this nature on the ACT. Okay, so the first method is the basic method, the basic of the basic method, which is just counting. It involves just counting the number of blocks that are used. All right, so let's write this down. Method 1 is just simple counting. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some patterns that manifest themselves when we are making use of this method of counting. All right. Okay, so we have the blocks here. For the first level, level 1, how many blocks are there? For level 1, you just have 1 block. Let me represent it with a dot. Okay, so for level 1, you have 1 block. How about level 2? For level 2, you have 2 blocks. All right, 1, 2, 2 blocks. And then for level 3, you have 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. So what do you notice about the number of blocks and the levels? They practically match each other, right? So the number of blocks that are present in each level, this is basically the consecutive numbers. You're counting 1, 2, 3, you're counting your consecutive numbers. So if we follow the pattern all the way down to level 12, what do you expect there to be? You're going to have 1, 2, 3, you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So that will be the number of blocks you have for the respective levels 11 and 12. All right, so for the basic counting method, all you just do is you just add all these numbers together. Okay, so going from level 1 all the way down to level 12, which will have 11 blocks, of course, and that will be your total. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and add this, but I'm going to use a specific pattern in adding these consecutive numbers, and then you see if you can see a pattern manifesting itself. Okay, we have a total of 12 numbers, 12 consecutive numbers that we're adding. What if I proceed to add the middle 2? Okay, so if I divide 12 by 2, I have 6. So we have 6 on top, 6 on the bottom. If I add 6 and 7, what do I get? 6 plus 7 is 13. All right, let's pick the next two. What if I add 5 and 8? 5 plus 8 is what? 13. Isn't that interesting? How about 4? 4 and 9. 4 plus 9. What is 4 plus 9? 13 again. What do you think is going to happen if I keep adding all the way out? It's always going to be 13. So 3 plus 10 is 13. An interesting way to add consecutive numbers, right? So you have 11 and 2. 11 plus 2 is 13. And then lastly, we have 12 and 1. All right, so whenever you're adding consecutive numbers, if there are even number of them, this pattern will always manifest itself. If you have odd numbers, you just have to omit the middle one and then just add around it, and you have the sum equal to that. So in this case, you have 13 here also. All right, so how many 13s do you think there are going to be? Well, there were 12 numbers and we divided them into two pairs, right? So we have pairs and each pair add up to 13. How many pairs are we going to have? We're going to have 6 pairs times 13. So we're going to add 13 6 times, or just simply compute 13 times 6. 13 times 6 is 60 plus 18, which is 78. And that's the answer, option letter B. All right, so this is method 1, which is just counting. There's nothing wrong with doing this method if you can't think of any other more advanced or faster ways of doing it. All right, so let's take a look at another method, slightly more advanced. Method 2 involves the use of the sum of arithmetic sequences known as arithmetic series. Okay, so method 2 is known as arithmetic series. So in order to use this method, first of all, you have to know what an arithmetic series is, and secondly, you need to know what the formula is. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at these numbers that we're working with here. We have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and it goes on all the way to 12. Now, how do we know that this is an arithmetic series? Well, every set of consecutive numbers forms if you add them, you have an arithmetic series because you have a common difference. Consecutive numbers have a common difference of what? 1, right? So from 1 to 2 is plus 1. From 2 to 3 is plus 1. 3 to 4 is plus 1. So if you add the same number, add or subtract the same number every single time for a series, then what you have is an arithmetic series. If you're multiplying the same constant repeatedly, you have a geometric series. All right. Okay, so since we have an arithmetic series situation here, let's go ahead and write down what the formula is. All right, so the formula is as follows. The formula is sum of n terms of an arithmetic series is n over 2 times a1, the first term, plus the last term, an. If you look at this formula, it's actually summarizing exactly what's happening here. So you have n over 2. How many numbers do we have here? We had 12, right? So 12 over 2 is 6. So we have 6 pairs. And then if you look at the formula, it says a1, the first term, plus the last term. So that's exactly what we did here. If you add the first term and the last term, 1 plus 12, you get 13. And you multiply it by the number of pairs you have, or the number of numbers divided by 2, that's 6. 13 times 6 is 78. So this formula is telling us exactly what we did here, but it's just faster and more concise. Okay, so we apply this formula to this situation that we have right here. What do we know? Based on this problem, we know that the first, well, what is n? N is the number of terms. N is 12. The first term, a1, is 1. And then the nth term, an, is a12, which is 12. Okay, and then when we'll plug it into the formula, S, the sum of the 12 terms is going to be n over 2, which is 12 over 2 times a1, 1 plus an, 12. All right, and that yields 12 over 2 is 6. 6 times 13, which is what we have here, and that gives us 78. So this is a much faster method if you can identify that you're dealing with an arithmetic series and you remember what the formula for the sum of n terms of an arithmetic series is. Okay, and then the last one is the most advanced one, which is the fastest one. Okay, so method 3 involves realizing what the shortcut is to add n consecutive numbers starting from 1. Okay, so it's just the sum of consecutive numbers from 1. Some people have this memorized. If you're taking advanced calculus, you need to know what your series on formulas are. So this is basically one of the series that you need to know, and you need to know what the formula is for that particular series. Okay, so the formula for method 3 is just a special case of formula 2 for method 2. All right, so the deal is as follows. If you have the sum of n consecutive numbers starting from 1, so 1 plus 2 plus da 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 da, all the way to n, the sum is simply n times 1 plus n over 2. That's the formula for the sum of n consecutive numbers starting from 1. All right, so let's apply this formula to this particular situation that we're dealing with here. So for this particular situation, n is going to be 12, right? Since we're adding 12 consecutive numbers starting from 1. So for this problem, n is equal to 12. So our sum is simply going to 1 plus 2 plus all the consecutive numbers all the way to 12 is just going to be 12 times 1 plus 12 over 2. All right, and then when you do the calculations, you have let's see what we have here. We have 12 times 13 over 2, and then you can divide 2 into 12. 2 goes into 12 6 times, and it will basically end up with what we had before. So 2 goes here 1, 2 goes here 6, and you have 6 times 13, and your final answer is going to be 78. All right, so this is the fastest method. This is the next, and then the longest method is this one right here. So whichever method works for you, go ahead and employ that method. Remember that when you're taking the ACT, time is of the essence. You have about 1 minute or less to solve each problem. So the faster you can solve a problem, the better it is for you. And remember, you can use a calculator, but it is also possible to solve all the problems in the ACT math section without the use of a calculator. So it's just something to keep in mind. All right, let's take a look at question number 2. Question 2 is a percent markup calculation. So you need to know how to do percent markup calculations to do well on your ACT, okay? All right, so the problem is as follows. To keep up with rising expenses, a motel manager needs to raise the $40 room rates by 22%. Question, what will be the new rate? Okay, so let's start off by taking a look at the formula for calculating percent markup or percent increase, okay? So the formula is as follows. The final price after the markup, final price, is basically the original price plus the amount that you marked up the price by. Okay, so to get the amount of price that you marked up by, you're gonna add, you need to multiply. So original price multiplied by 1. So original price multiplied by 1 will just give you the original price. So you have the original price plus, now this component I'm about to insert in this formula basically tells you the markup amount, okay? And that is simply the percent markup divided by 100, okay? So what percentage are you marking up by? That's basically what it is. All right, another way to do this, if you don't want to use doing fractions, is just add 1 to the percent markup in decimal form. So this represents the percent markup in decimal form. That's much faster. You can do this mentally in decimal form. So in this particular example, the percent markup is 22%, in decimal form is 0.22. So you just multiply 40 by 1 plus 0.22, or 40 times 1.22. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and work it out. So the final price, we're going to apply this formula to this particular problem, is going to be the original price, which is $40, times 1 plus the percent markup divided by 100, or the percent markup in decimal form, okay? So if you want to change 22% into decimal, you move the decimal point to the left 2 places, 1 2. So that gives you 0.22, okay? Or you can do percent markup divided by 100. If you have 22, 22 divided by 100, okay? Because 22% in fraction form is 22 divided by 100. And then if you write 22, if you convert 22 of 100 into decimal form, guess what? It's 0.22 because you just move the decimal point on the top and bottom equivalent number of times until you have 1 in the denominator, right? So you go 1, 2. Because you have 2 zeros in the denominator, 1, 2, you have 0.22 over 1, which is 0.22. So all these three numbers are exactly the same thing. Okay, all right, so percent markup over 100 or the percent markup in decimal form, whichever way you want to look at it, is 0.22. All right, so what we're doing in essence is multiplying 40 by 1.22. All right, so you can multiply this with your calculator or you can just do it by hand real quick. So you have 40 times 1.22, so I'm just going to put 4122, right? So this is the 0th spot right here, and then 0, 0, 0, and then 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 1 is 4. So you have 4880. This is 1.22. So you count the number of decimal digits you have, the number of digits you have to the right of the decimal in your product. You apply that to your final answer, okay? And the factors to the product. So you have only 2 digits to the right of the decimal. So you start over here and count 2 decimal places to compensate for that. 1, 2, and it's 48.8. Remember, you can always use your calculator to carry out the arithmetic computations if you don't feel comfortable multiplying numbers by hand. Okay, so your answer is 48.8. This is the amount. This will be the new rate after the 22% hike or markup has been applied. So the answer to number 2 is option letter. A ratio is just a fraction, and proportions are a statement that two ratios are equal. So let's take a look at 3. It reads, as a salesperson, your commission is directly proportional to the dollar amount of sales you make. If your sales are 800, your commission is 112. How much commission would you earn if you had 1400 in sales? All right, so let's start by writing down the formula that will guide the problem solving process. So the formula for ratios and proportions is as follows. The ratio A to B, if it's proportional with the ratio C to D, then we can write this as A over B is equal to C over D. Okay, another way you can see this is A to B and C to D. All right, so in this particular situation here, we have two measures that are in proportion, namely sales and commission. So we have, in the first case, sales to commission are proportional. So sales to commission is equal to sales to commission. All right. So we can write this in fraction form. So when we're setting up our ratios in fraction form, you need to pay close attention to the units, okay? So in this particular situation, let's put the sales as the numerator, and then we'll put the commission as the denominator, all right? So we'll set up our proportion that way so we do not interchange anything and ruin the problem. Alrighty, so let's set it up. In this particular problem, you have the first ratio. The sales is 800 and the commission is what? $112. All right, so let's write it down in fraction form. So the sales is 800 over the commission, which is 112. So that's the first ratio. Since you're in proportion, that's going to be equal to the next ratio. please pay attention to the units, okay? So 1400 is sales. So that's sales. So 1400 divided by the commission. That's a ratio of that. So, and what's the commission that goes with 1400 in sales? Well, it says how much commission. So the second part of the ratio that we need is what we're looking for. So this one, let's call it x, okay? So over x. So there you see we have a proportion. We have a statement that two ratios or two fractions are the same, okay? So if we solve this resulting fraction for x, then we'll know what the commission is for $1,400 in sales. Alrighty, so all we're just going to do here is cross multiply. If we cross multiply this, bottom right to the top left, bottom left to the top right, cross multiply, we are going to have 800x equals 1400 times 112. Now, remember for the ACT, you can do the entire test without a calculator, so I'm not going to multiply it out yet, or else I might be dealing with numbers that are too big to handle by hand. So I'll keep them like this and see if I can reduce before I multiply. Now, using our algebra skills, how do we get x isolated here? To get x isolated, we are going to use the inverse of multiplication. We're going to divide both sides of our equation by 800. Divide by 800, divide by 800. And that's going to yield x is equal to, so we have 1400 times 112 divided by 800. We can divide by 100 in the top and bottom, just cancel out the zeros, so cancel. All right, and then 4 goes into 8 two times. I know 4 goes into 112 because 4 goes into the last two digits 12. So if 4 goes into the last two digits of any number, then 4 goes into that number. Alrighty, so 4 goes into 112, 4 goes into 11 two times, remainder 3, 4 goes into 32 8 times. 2 certainly goes into 28 since it's even. 2 goes here 1, 2 goes here 14. And then 14 times 14, if you remember your squares, it's 196. Alright, so the commission that you earned for $1,400 in sales is option B, $196. All right, let's take a look at question 4. In question 4, we're looking at how to solve algebraic equations. So the question reads, if 7 plus 3x equals 22, then 2x is what? All right, so you have to be careful with this problem because we're not just asked to solve, we're asked to find what 2x is. So we're basically using our solution to solve another problem. It's a two-part problem here. So let's write down what our plan of attack is. So for part 1, what we're going to do is we're going to find the value of x. Okay? And then part 2, we're going to do what? We're going to find 2x or double our previous answer. Finding 2x is the same thing as doubling x. Alrighty? Okay, so let's do the first part. Part 1, we want to find x using the using properties of equality. So 7 plus 3x is equal to 22. Alrighty, so we subtract 7 from both sides to get x isolated. Subtract 7 from both sides. And what does that give us? We have 3x is equal to 15. And then you proceed to divide both sides by 3 to get x isolated. And you have x equals 5. Okay? And then if you notice your options here, you have 5 as the answer. So is that correct? Is your answer 5? Well, this is a very good distractor right here. If you're not paying attention to what the question is asking you to do, you select that and get it wrong. All right? Remember, the problem asks for 2x. You're not just looking for x, okay? And then we just did part 1. We have not done part 2 yet. Part 2 requires us to find 2x. So the key takeaway from this problem is read the question carefully. Make sure you're asking what the question is asking. You're answering what the question is asking, not answering what you feel the question is asking. All right? So let's go ahead and do that. X is equal to 5, so we can just double that and get 10. But just to show you the steps, just multiply both sides of the equation by 2, and you get x is equal to, 2x is equal to 10. And the answer to number 4 is option letter G. All right, let's take a look at question number 5. Question number 5 is a total cost calculations problem. All right, question 5 reads, the total cost of renting a car is $30 for each day the car is rented plus 28.5 cents for each mile the car is driven. What is the total cost for renting the car for 5 days and driving 350 miles? No sales tax involved. All right, let's write down the formula for calculating total cost. So the formula is as follows. The total cost is given by, so total cost equals, so total cost is equal to the unit cost of the item multiplied by the quantity. All right. Now in this particular case, we have two total costs that we need to account for. We have the total cost for the days and the total cost for the miles. All right, so two components that we need to factor in our calculation. So let's write it down. The total cost for days, the total cost for number of days and miles as a composite total cost is going to be the total cost for number of days combined with what? Plus the total cost for switch colors here. Total cost for miles. Total cost for miles driven. All right, so for this individual total cost, we're going to apply the unit cost times the quantity formula for each one, and then we're going to add the final answer. All right, so let's direct our attention to days. All right, how many days was the car driven, and what's the unit cost? So the unit cost for renting a car is $30. How do we know? Because the problem says it's $30 for each day. $30 for each day. Okay, so that's the unit cost for per day. So we have 30, and then we're going to multiply that by the number of days or quantities, which is 5. All right, and then we're going to add that to the unit cost for each mile is 28.5 cents. So 28.5 cents is the unit cost for each mile. So we have 28.5. We're going to write that in decimal form, okay? So 28.5 cents is 0.28, and then half is 0.5. So it's going to be 0.285. All right, that's the unit cost per miles. How many miles were driven? 350 miles. All right. So remember, the calculator can be used for the ACT, so you can use a calculator to calculate what the answer is. Let's do this part by hand. 30 times 50 is 150. Now, if you wanted to do it just by estimation, just by looking at it, you can just say, oh, you know what? 0.285 is about 0.3, and that's like about a third, close to a third. And you have 350 here. We can round this down to about 300. So a third of 300 is 100. 100 plus 150 is 250. So the closest one to that is option C, if you just wanted to estimate. But since we have the luxury of using our calculators, we can just plug this product into our calculators and determine what the answer is. Okay, so in this particular case, if we put in 0.285 times 350 in our calculator, we'll get 99.75. And then when you add it all up, you have 249.75 75 as your final answer. And the answer to number 5 is option letter C. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. I really appreciate it. If you found the contents of this tutorial helpful in your studies of for preparation for your ACTs, do give us a thumbs up. We appreciate your feedback. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for updates to the remainder of this series. If you have any questions or comments or any special requests to get you ready for the ACT, just place your comments in the comment section below and we'll be more than glad to assist. More support resources can be found at our website at mathgotserved.com to check it out. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.